Good afternoon. Welcome to Hong Kong for people who have been coming from a long way from different parts of the world. It's my honor today to introduce to you some of the development in education about how to develop Hong Kong into a more innovative environment. Let me begin by a very brief introduction about the education in Hong Kong. Today my focus is more on the K-12. In terms of K-12, Hong Kong have a free education, and we just renew our policy to support 15 years free education, starting from kindergarten. So primarily about 80% of the schools are supported or by government by using either direct subsidy or some kind of government operated schools. In terms of education budget, Hong Kong, we have about 10 billion expenditure on education every year, so it's not a small money, right? It's about 80% of our government expenditure. In terms of network infrastructure, Hong Kong is a modern city. We have good coverage in terms of both broadband and Wi-Fi. And in terms of school infrastructure, 4 years ago, probably we are just like any places that school probably have network, but mobile is still not in a classroom. But Hong Kong started a IT and education strategy 3 years ago, and today we have about 80% of schools all equipped with Wi-Fi in every classroom. In terms of culture, Hong Kong is bilingual, and so most schools have the challenge of supporting both Chinese and English. And also, and Hong Kong is one of the eastern cities that have good performance in academic subjects. So this is a very general background about Hong Kong. And we have about 1,000 schools, including primary and secondary schools, distributed all over Hong Kong. You can see that some of the schools looks different, but actually, because they are all funded by the government, so they are under one similar formula to build and to operate. So you can imagine in Hong Kong, most of the school systems under the mainstream school system are very similar. And about Hong Kong Education City, we are established 16 years ago with an aim to support technology in K-12. The government, well, I would say quite, in 16 years ago, we do have a vision that technology will impact education to a great extent. And the question is, how are we going to embrace this change? Is the government going to set up different departments? Or are we going to set up a regulatory body to do this? Or what kind of model will our school system going to support technology? And the Education City is set up as a government-owned limited company to take up this mission. And this is kind of a very unique model in different countries that compared with Korea, Japan, Taiwan. We all use different model in doing this, but this is the way we started 16 years ago in Hong Kong. Now, talking about innovation in education, I just want to recap a very fundamental things. In terms of learning, I think the changes started 15 years ago is we started to think about the social view of learning. It's no longer a fixed classroom, fixed library, fixed subject knowledge, and so on. But it's kind of like what we refer to today as a socially constructed knowledge, which is even more important than something we have for hundreds of years. And in terms of this change, actually, this personal learning environment and network is a very successful project by PolyU. This is from Professor Eric Choi's work. But I used these projects to elaborate that when we say socially constructed knowledge or how we learn in this new generation, it is not something from your teacher or from the books. Indeed, from the UNESCO research, for 14 years old student, there is a research that says 14 years old student, 80% of the knowledge, the content they know, they learn, are not from printed media. Actually, they are mostly from other medias, not delivered by school. So this is very kind of alarming that actually many students don't learn from schools, they learn from elsewhere. And in terms of books or the resources we give to the students, again, it's not something that you can decide what you give. The student will build their own personal learning network based on their interests, their particular environment, their friends, their groups, and so on. Even when we talk about social network, students will have their own social network. It's not a general social network, but they will build different types of social network. So there are, when we study how to use collaboration through social network in learning, a lot of works need to be done on the social network analytic to see actually how this happens. It's not very straightforward. Now, this is a very sophisticated environment, but innovation does not necessarily happen in very complex environment. In this very famous experiment by Professor Sugata Mitra, he put a computer in a wall in a very poor area in India, and students come by and look at this thing. They thought this is a TV, but this TV has something that can be controlled. So they started to play around with this computer, and in his research, actually, on average, after 20 minutes, the little boys will be able to start to work on a little bit on the computer. But the even more strange things that in his research is the computer is in English. The boys don't know English, but they can still use it. Very surprising, right? But what I'm trying to borrow from his finding is actually a student can learn as long as you provide sufficient tools and information for them. And in today's technology, actually, they do not necessarily need a guided approach. Professor Mitra actually followed up this experience with another even more in-depth study by putting in a CD-ROM with DNA curriculum into the computer. And he also finds that the students somehow can learn about these DNA materials later on. Now, Hong Kong SCT provide a lot of learning resources and platform for our students. These are some of the examples. We have English, Chinese, game-based learning, special education, and so on. We have a lot of different resources for our students. And we have done this for 15 years now. But what happens in the last 15 years? I would say what happens in the last 5 years is very important. It's very different from the previous 10 years. This is a graph that shows our resources usage or our network usage in the past 3 years. You can see that, again, very interesting. These are for teachers' service, for teachers' professional training. Very stable, nothing, you see no growth, right? This is Go e-learning. We introduced a new teacher professional development site that captures real classroom, how they use e-learning tools and new technologies. Well, quite okay. Within 2 years, we have quite good growth in teachers' usage. But more importantly, it's about parents. We also have parents' portal about what happens in education, about in what way we are changing the education system. And you can see the parents' participation are huge. And it's no longer a topic that school can close its door and just discuss inside the school, but it's something that actually the entire public and the parents are aware of. And also this special education, the equity in education issues are also have increasing interest. So is it the right time that we do something really drastic to be introduced into the system? This is something that I always have in mind. Now, second thing is, we all know innovative education environment will have a very strong correlation with mobile learning environment. And are the teachers ready? Again, from our website statistic, we find that actually 4 years ago, about 80-something% of teachers are basically desktop users. But after, this is just a statistic in May this year, we have, it's almost half-half. So half of the teachers already go mobile. So, well, I believe if in the outside world, in the commercial world, actually this percentage is relatively low. In some teenage market, and you may find 80-90% going mobile. But that's not the case for teachers. But still, the growth is quite promising in the last few years. And how about students? Now, because I'm talking about K-12, so we include some junior students who don't have their mobile device. Not all of them have their mobile device. So the percentage is smaller. We have about 68% still mainly used computers in order to get access to technology. And among the Android, iOS, we always have these questions, which is better and so on. And in Hong Kong situation, it's about half-half. It's more or less equal share of the market so far. And in terms of the resource or tools available for students, well, again, many years ago, we are talking about offering one education portal so that students can get the information from one portal. And then we say, no, they can Google whatever they need, or they can just go to YouTube and find whatever they need. This is only half true. In one way, yes, it is. But on the other hand, we also find students, for example, we have an inquiry learning project that require the student to ask questions, find information, and so on. And you might not aware that in junior secondary students, most of the students will come back with same information, even though everyone goes to Google, because they all come from Wiki. So that's something, it looks like you are doing something bigger than just textbooks, but in reality it's not. It's just textbook in another form. And students actually don't get the necessary knowledge to really explore the information by themselves. So still some guided approach is necessary. We can not fulfill all the needs by just one platform. We need a mixture of everything, including learning management system, video, e-books, and so on. And so this is the picture that we are working on. In terms of resources, it actually is, has a great variety of different things that we need. And obviously, there's no single company or single organization that can deliver all this to meet the needs. Now, that's about the situation we are in. And when setting about our IT education target, our strategy, what are we going to achieve? There are many things we can do. Actually, if we look at the e-learning portfolio about what are the important things, they probably have at least 40, 50 different areas and different stage of things that we can do. But in Hong Kong in particular, we have one question that we must answer, because we have already started this for 15 years. And we have many successful projects in some schools. But we so far have not yet developed a common pedagogy or system or resources or some kind of improved learning design that can be expanded or replicated in bigger scale. So if you cannot do it in bigger scale, you can imagine that many of the projects, even though they are very good, they are very short-lived. Once a teacher left a school, no one is going to take up this project again. So in terms of bringing sustainable change to the system, we must be able to, like this European community study that says, must have some organization, technological and pedagogical changes. These are the three very important factors. And in terms of innovation, there are different domains. And again, most of the projects in Hong Kong, we will usually refer to nature of innovation. And well, if your project is very interesting, you will be covered by the media, you get a lot of promotion in the media and so on. So these are something that happens all the time. But this is exactly the area that makes the learning design not able to be replicated, because they are all very unique or very costly or very dependent on some factors. On the other hand, the implementation phase, whether we can develop in the mainstream system, this is our most important question so far. The others are like, for research, if you have some good pedagogic design, is it local or is it regional, or it can be applied globally? Or if it can be applied to certain subjects, or it is general, different culture, different subject, all are applicable. And also, we talk about organizational changes. Is it just in the classroom, or you need to have some improvement in the organization and management of the whole school, or even in the school system? So these are all the dimensions that we have. And Hong Kong, 5 years ago, not today, 5 years ago, it's about this. And that's why I always refer to this so-called mainstream implementation is relatively weak. But I believe this is similar in many different places, except that there are some e-learning initiatives, they are relatively straightforward and standardized, and they can be implemented in a larger scale. So the fourth strategy on IT in education, we started this in 2015. This is our fourth strategy. The three most important enabling factors are the 100% school Wi-Fi, mobile devices, and e-resources. These are the three things that started to make things happen. We haven't referred to pedagogy, assessment, curriculum yet, but these are the enabling factors that start the ball rolling. And of course, in terms of other things, the curriculum, pedagogy, assessment, professional development, community building, and evaluation by research, make sure the system can improve by itself as time goes by. These are all important elements in this strategic plan. But put it into action items, we have summarized this into 6 action areas. One is school infrastructure, second is resources, third is the curriculum, pedagogy, and assessment, especially assessment in terms of e-assessment, because in anything we do, it's very hard to go back to paper and pencil tests for evaluation. So we have actually introduced quite some assessment system in the last few years. Communities of practice, parents' engagement, and how to make it sustainable. That's the strategic plan itself have to be reviewed, researched, and improved. And the building blocks, these are not the building blocks for the entire strategy. The entire strategy has much more to do with the whole different domains. But this is the building blocks, again, to make at least the school have something to be able to use and started to benefit from it. We started with Wi-Fi in schools and started with SCT to provide some infrastructure support for schools. And on top of that, we have the virtual learning environment, which usually referred to as LMS environment, or a virtual learning environment, or a learning management system. We have an education marketplace called EDMO. The reason for this is we need a large number of different e-learning solutions. Again, no single company or organization can do it all. So we need a system or a mechanism to help to bring things together, which I will go back to these e-solutions later on. And another part is about the textbook, reading, other digital learning materials. and assessment. So these are the building blocks for the first few things. But to connect this, we also need two vertical strategies. One is mobile and social. So everything we do has to be to allow the student to do it in mobile and integrate with social platforms. And another thing also very important is about membership. Membership is why this is so important, because we are not talking about a single university or a single school to offer the service. It's an ecosystem that many, many different service providers and thousands of teachers are involved in the whole ecosystem. And that's why a membership, or we can also refer to as a single sign-on account, single ID, single education ID, this kind of concept are very important to integrate the whole things. And we also run a Learning Teaching Expo in Hong Kong. Again, there is a very important reason for this. We know technology is evolving very rapidly and is developing everywhere in the world. We cannot just stay in Hong Kong in terms of using technology. But at the same time, we cannot bring all the teachers to all different places. So the best way, of course, is we create some events that brings the best of solutions to Hong Kong. Now, about the single sign-on, right now, SCT has about 90% of the teachers and students are our members, meaning that they have our account. They can log in our system and through our system to use different services. What are the different services that they can use? Apart from the SCT resources, which we provide quite some of them, they can also access to school Wi-Fi infrastructure. About why they need this kind of single sign in order to use the Wi-Fi. In Hong Kong, we have developed a territory-wide Wi-Fi single sign system. Schools don't need to maintain this account password. They just ask a vendor to build the equipment, and the back end, we will do all the single sign account provision, and they can just use the system, so use the network. So it become a very easy infrastructure for schools. And so we actually, in the last 3 years, we managed to build Wi-Fi for schools at a pace of about 300 schools per year in such pace, because the infrastructure is much simplified. And they can also use this same account to access apps, web, and web have different single sign technology, including OpenAuthn and this SAML. These are technical protocols that allows our members to connect to a third-party system. One thing also worth mentioning is our single sign also connects to a special education system. When we say special education, you can imagine there are some students who can't use a keyboard or can't use a mouse. They are maybe physically disabled or with other limitations. And by integrating our systems, our single sign system with their systems, they can use their special equipment to log in and use our services as well. So it's kind of this is a small thing, but after we have done that, we find very glad that we are able to do it, and you saw the student with disability able to access to much more resources. And this is an example of a third-party system. This is called MathSpace, a math adaptive learning platform from Australia. We offer this platform right now to about 40 schools in Hong Kong to use it. And from their login screen, this is their standard login screen. You can see a small icon here, log into Hong Kong SCT. So in a commercial platform, they build this icon. Students in Hong Kong, they can just click this icon, use their Hong Kong SCT account, and able to use this service. And because of this, we are able to deliver this to tens of thousands of students use in just a few days. It's just like a plug and play integration. And ebooks, we have a bookshelf with many different publishers joining. To do a bookshelf is very easy, actually. Everyone can build your own organization's bookshelf. But to build a multi-publishers bookshelf is more complex because of this IP right and different access requirements. we managed to build this platform because in K-12 education, we need the involvement of many different publishers. So and the one more step beyond the a bookshelf is a digital library, right? Actually, the ultimate goal is for every student to like having a personal digital library. And again, it's not too complex to do this because we already have the digital books, we already have bookshelf. We just need to package the books with the IP rights, the business model, make these books available as a package so the student will have their own personal library with maybe 300, 400 books that they can use. And this digital book platform is not just reading, but we now have about 40 publishers participating, so have many books from different publishers. We have the account and so on are integrated with a single account system, so the access is easier. Students single sign-on and can use books from all different publishers. And another more important thing is this bookshelf actually have built-in learning data capture and exchange capability. So schools actually can access to the reading data from the students, which is kind of very welcome by many school librarians. In terms of online learning platforms, we have also gone through some transformation. Previously, many different publishers or organizations can build some learning systems for students. But we started a project to talk to different service providers in Hong Kong that we should standardize our offering. We cannot each one offer their own unique system. So we started a LMS transformation, meaning that we will deliver some standards, some practices that can allow different course provider to join in a similar platform. And we use Canvas. Canvas is out there, so you probably are very familiar with this screen as well. And SCity is not a school. We support school, but we are not a school by ourselves. But we do run some courses for students. For example, this TV news, we have the archive of the news in video news in Hong Kong, and we use this as a learning platform for students to learn. After reading some news, they can do some quiz and have a semester basis reward and so on. And the important thing is we want to experiment how well the student perceive this kind of learning environment, and is it very difficult for junior students? Because some teachers said it's very hard to use LMS, right? I believe many of you have similar feedback from teachers. But our experiment is quite successful. In our first launch, we managed to have about 500 schools using the system, which is about 50% of schools in Hong Kong. And total users right now, I think it's more than 14,000, something like that. So we don't have a hotline support for students. They have to work on their own. So it's okay. They all work on their own. They go through this learning management guided approach. And also about e-solutions. These are solutions from all over the world, including from United States, this Springpop, this Math Space is from Australia. This Trick for STEM learning, they have thousands of STEM video, very good video from UK. And we have some learning solutions from Finland as well. These are like computational thinking, some game-based learning design. But I want to maybe especially note this MyETFire. This is an particular e-learning solution not for subject learning or not for general learning. It is for social emotional development for students in schools. So it's like a design that the student practicing on this platform, and they will learn how to appreciate others, how to communicate with fellow students and so on. So these are all very unique systems. And of course, after our evaluation, we think these are good. So we introduce them into Hong Kong by centrally acquire these solutions and then help schools to adopt them. We have about 200 schools right now using all these different solutions. And because of the infrastructure I just referred to, actually we are able to do this with again with hundreds of schools, and all this is all done in about a month, starting from we decide which platform to use, and school can start to using them. So there are some services that are more strategic. They are not just to design for some particular subject or to learn some particular, not of some particular learning goal, but the services itself is a study about how well can students use them and how to improve them. And so far we have talked about this Go e-learning for teachers, virtual learning environment for students. This e-REAP resource adoption program is the international e-solutions for schools. This reading personal digital library scheme. We also have a student assessment platform that is based on an assessment item bank of well-calibrated items. So school can make use of this platform, pick some assessment item that are well-calibrated, and do their own assessment in schools. In that way, they are not just, the teachers don't have to guess whether the assessment is at certain level or if it meets the objective, because they can borrow from some well-designed and well-calibrated assessment items. So that is about the more technology side of it. But in order to make things happen that way, actually there are a lot of community building that we need to do. The first thing, well, the first group actually is something that in schools, we don't do it 5 years ago, meaning that schools don't partner with commercial organizations. Teachers just teach, or the activities are mainly in schools. But again, 5 years ago, we started industry partnership. We have a project with Samsung that introduced thousands of tablets into schools with 67 schools. And indeed, some of them get some international awards after this pilot program. So again, it's quite encouraging. We have a partnership with Finland. This is Consul General of Finland. We have an agreement to introduce some Finnish solutions in Hong Kong. We also partner with UK company, British Council. Another one is the example is about the local IT infrastructure companies. Actually, almost all the local IT infrastructure company have an agreement with SCT in terms of integrating and standardizing the access. That's why the Wi-Fi throughout Hong Kong, no matter from which provider, you can use the same single sign-on and same integration to support schools. And teacher professional community, SCT also runs a lot of events every year. And we also find the mechanism of building a so-called Center of Excellence scheme quite effective. This is under a government-funded scheme that the Education Bureau will support some schools, name them as Center of Excellence, and they will train other schools. And that is, so far, to me, is quite effective and successful. We have quite some new initiative channeled to schools through this Center of Excellence system. And parents, as you can see from the earlier graph, actually the parents' involvement is very important. There's quite some schools that have, like they introduce bring your own device, and the parent asks why they have 2 kids in different class, why they can't share one device and have to buy 2. Very simple question, right? But not easy to answer if the family is poor. But it's very important to let the parents engage into the different strategies and let them also be supportive when the students are not in school when they are at home or so on. We run a series of parent seminars, and with, I would say, a failure in that. The reason, again, is not hard to foresee. We run parent seminar after schools. So in every big district in Hong Kong, we run this seminar. And every seminar have, on average, about 100 parents attending. So you can imagine we have millions of, about 2 million parents, and we can accommodate 100 in one section. So how long will it take before you can really change the mindset or really help to prevent problems happen in the future? So we change our strategy. We go into shopping malls. We run some big event in shopping malls, and that is much better. Although I would say it's still a long way, but at least we have some breakthrough in this way, that we can engage thousands of parents in a weekend. So I think this is a better way. But another more important strategy, I think, is we have to continue to work with the social service sector in order to identify those families and parents that needs more help. Now, Learning and Teaching Expo, I explained earlier that this is our 7th year now. Every year we have hundreds of exhibitors from all over the world, and last year we have 11,000 visitors, and about 27% are from overseas. About 3,800 visitors are from overseas. So we see that this EdTech, or this more innovative education area, is kind of receiving attention everywhere in Europe, United States, or Asia. And we see this growth, very strong growth over the years. And back to our original plan, this is what we are 4 or 5 years ago, and what are we expecting maybe 3 to 4 years down the road. We are hoping that we can a little bit better in innovation. I cannot be too aggressive to expect disruptive innovation happening everywhere. This is not realistic, but we hope there will be some good and measurable changes happening. But a more important dimension is the mainstream. This is something we definitely have to do. The government has already committed that this plan is for each and every school. It's not something for like a pilot group or for some pioneering schools. So this is something I'm very glad to share today. I think we still have time for a few questions. Thank you very much. So just feel free if you have any questions or any things that are of interest that we can discuss.
Thank you. Thank you, Victor. That's a very interesting talk. In fact, my question relates to your targets. Can you go back to that slide?
Sure.
Because it's very interesting that I can understand that you want to have a wide range of actors or participants. Yes. So your target, the organization change, and the nature of the innovation, you want them to expand as such, and you even want the access level to be regional. Yes. But in terms of the implementation, I just want to clarify, are you talking about specific innovation that has to be implemented by everybody or by a large number of teachers in school, or are you talking about implementation by all teachers, or at least a larger number of teachers wanting to adopt innovations or e-learning? Because it's a big difference. Yeah. I mean, even at university, particularly probably at university, we never force our teachers to do anything.
Yes.
And yet,
Sure.
and yet many of them adopt e-learning because they like it and they want to do it. And so in terms of that implementation, I think we have a quite high number. But if you have a particular pedagogy, particular innovation that you want all the teachers to adopt, I don't think that's actually very successful. It will not be very successful either. So that's why I want to see.
Yes, in terms of implementation phases, I would say the first things is we have to provide the environment that if teachers or schools want to do it, they will be empowered to do so. I think that's very important because 5 years ago, actually many teachers are complaining that the network is not reliable, we cannot ask them to do anything in the classroom. So this is something we have to overcome. This is enabling every school and every teacher. I think that's the first stage. The second stage is to make something commonly accessible to all teachers. So if you want to use these e-learning solutions, they are available. You don't have to go out, evaluate 3 years and use it because we have already built up this community who test it, evaluate it, implement it, show you some examples, show you classroom video, how they really do it. So we are also not able to force teachers to do something. I think it's the same. But we are able to make cases that are, as I said earlier, Hong Kong is very much operating under similar curriculum, similar assessment, and similar school systems. So if something that can happen in some schools, if they are not because of some very unique factors, then it will be able to be replicated in other schools. This is some of the things that we hope to see it happen. Of course, in terms of using different pedagogy in different subjects and so on, there are great variety of choices. So there's no fixed solution that we can say or recommend and so on. But we are able to say build our Go e-learning website under different subjects, different learning, different pedagogy approach. Maybe this is experiential learning. Maybe that is some other pedagogies. Under that type of pedagogy, there are a group of examples available for teachers. So it's still a professional development stage. So it's not something that we can do. But the last thing I think is will sooner or later make some really system change in Hong Kong, which is related to student learning analytics. If you don't use technology, we are not able to do this, right? It's just too costly to do it in paper and pencil way. But as I said, we have a calibrated item that we can diagnose students' learning. If we are able to do this, provide these tools to schools, then certainly they will try to do something online and then understand their students' learning. Indeed, we introduced an e-assessment platform last September, and in 6 months we have about 200 schools using it. And while there is also always a curve, like any technology adoption, the first 20% is always easy. You can always get 20% early adopters. But the hard part is to go over the 50%. When we will be able to do that. And we expect in another 2 years, probably we'll be able to go over the 50% curve. I think that's something we try very hard to and hope to achieve. See if any other.
Thanks for your talk, Victor. You share with us overall picture for, K-12 system in Hong Kong. So I guess for 1,000 schools, there is, as you mentioned, very consistent in terms of curriculum assessment. Okay, apart from the fact that there may be majority focus on DSE on school level and then IB and then a little bit on other curriculum, still very consistent. But we are mostly in higher education, I guess. In Hong Kong, I guess even in a single university, we have to manage single sign-on, not as simple as to 1,000 schools, one single sign-on. So how do you see, from the Hong Kong S City, especially for students transit from school level to higher education, what insight you would share regarding e-learning when a student having a very consistent experience and they come into university in Hong Kong?
Excellent questions. We have all this kind of discussion from kindergarten to primary to secondary to universities. There are many issues actually coming up. I just add that other than technology, actually we also have this special education needs issue coming up because in secondary and primary school we have all this expertise, identify certain learning needs, but they are not being transferred when they go to universities. In terms of e-learning, well, it's very ironical to say this. Actually, I myself work in university for more than 20 years. And my mission now is really to bring the university's expertise in learning and so on. And hopefully we can modify the whole thing and make it able to be used in the K-12 systems. But after several years, we actually find that in terms of use of technology in K-12 classroom, actually they can be quite advanced. I don't mean technology itself is advanced, but the way they integrate into the interaction and learning can be quite advanced, because university probably don't interfere too much with how you do it other than in the lecture, but in classrooms and school have projects. So now let me go back to the university system and K-12 system. Actually, they are a little bit connection. They are not entirely disconnected. One is about teacher training and K-12, which is obviously very important. So in terms of teacher training in several universities, we do have this account system extended to cover university students. And indeed, we have this learning management system offering teacher training courses for some teachers as well. This right now is in smaller scale, but I hope it can be expanded in a bigger scale in the future. In terms of resource integration and access integration, university has a single sign system based on a technology called Shibboleth, which is a federation of single sign system that different universities can contribute their student information and then share access to some common system. This is something we already have in Hong Kong, but I know it's not being used in a very extensive way. But this kind of concept will continue to work. I mean, SCity is like a big identity provider. We have about 1 million accounts in Hong Kong. And we, of course, very welcome to integrate this infrastructure with universities, which have another 500,000 students. So I hope we can work more with university to make this happen. And in terms of, I actually see that in some e-learning pedagogy, they are also similar in universities and schools. So there are some platforms like the Keep platform at Chinese U. They also have many learning resources that can be used in secondary, primary schools. And there are some in our Go e-learning website that can also be applied in universities. So I see a lot of synergy there. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cheng. Yeah, so I'd like you to stay on the stage. We have a souvenir to present to you. As we call Dr. Eva Wong to present the souvenir. Thank you, Mr. Chern and Dr. Wong. So this is the end of our afternoon plenary session. Parallel sessions will be so parallel sessions will start immediately in nearby breakout rooms at this podium floor, and we'll be having a tea break at 3:55. Please also remember to return at 5:45 for the closing out, and we will be announcing the host for our next ELFA 2018. Thank you. And